All righty. We will give some, hello everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Brooklyn FI webinar series. I'm joined today by two wonderful folks that I'm excited to introduce to all of you. We'll give folks a few more minutes to join. Where are you both located? I know where you are, but for those who are just hanging out in the room, where are you guys located, Suzanne and Jade?
Basically East Side LA, but I never limit myself, nor Jade would probably. We're a little more East Side LA. Or Jade, you can speak for yourself.
I'm based in Silver Lake, but kind of work all over as far as Woodland Hills and Thousand Oaks, going north and all the way down to San Diego and everything in between. Suzanne and I both we live in the East Side, so that's kind of our main territory, but
we both have people that are we're involved. We have two homes, kind of.
Yes.
Got it.
I live part-time in Topanga.
Got it. Which in Los Angeles,
in San Diego,
which basically means bi-coastal. When your significant other or children or close family members live on the other side of LA.
Sometimes it's fun to remind yourself it's not London, so you can actually jump in the car and go have dinner. You're like, oh, right.
Right. We can actually do this. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get things started and get everybody introduced. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and some more folks will join us as we're talking. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for attending our webinar. We're calling this, Are You Ready for Home Ownership? We're going to cover lots of exciting topics. I've got two experts here who have taken many people through the home purchase process, so I hope to learn some things myself. I'm AJ Ayers. I think I know most of you hanging out in our attendee pen over there. I'm one of the co-founders here at Brooklyn FI, and I've got Suzanne Carney and Jay Devitt with me here today. Suzanne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live on the east side of LA, and I have been in real estate for about 10 years. And I really, really believe in both income and single family home owning. I think one is your life and one is a great source of income. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. How about you, Jade?
Yeah, I've been a realtor now for 4 years and kind of focusing on just taking people to the next step in life. It's an emotional process with residential real estate. And my job is just to kind of be a smooth guide for people to take them to the next step. I also have a construction background, and I've been a contractor for about 20 years. So I kind of try to bring that as a value add as well.
Awesome. And I'm a financial planner. So a lot of the conversations that I have with clients are surrounding, can I afford this? Is this a good idea? In the real estate industry, there are a lot of professionals who, real estate is the best way to increase your net worth. Financial planners out here are saying it's a great part of your portfolio. So I'm interested to have this discussion with both of you. So let's get into it. Before we get started, drop your questions for the panelists in the chat or Q&A box. If you did submit a question ahead of time, I do have it at the end of the presentation. But if anything comes up throughout the presentation, feel free to just drop it in the chat box. And a recording of this webinar will be posted to brooklynfi.com/events in a few days as well. So if there's anything you missed or you want to share it or reference it in the future, you can always come back here. So today's agenda, we'll talk about saving for a down payment, how to know if you are ready for home ownership, the professionals you need to know to actually buy a home, lawyers, lenders, agents, inspectors, etc. A sneak peek into the home purchase process, things that first-time homeowners need to know, what to expect your first year as a homeowner, and then of course, audience questions at the end. So let's get into it. Are you ready? Great. So I always like to start with kind of stepping back a moment. When should we start thinking about home ownership? A lot of people have been thinking about buying a home since they were, I don't know, 5 or 6 when, they lived in a home with their parents. But usually the real conversation about home ownership begins, when you have enough income, when you have enough money, when you're ready to take that step. So, as a financial planner, typically the first step is understanding how much house we can afford. And with a lot of our clients, that can change literally overnight. A lot of our clients are going to be going through a liquidity event. So it might be on Tuesday, they could afford a $700,000 house. And then by Friday, that number just went up to $3 million. So, we always talk about not buying too much house, but sometimes the amount of house that we can afford gets bigger. So that's kind of our first step here. And I like to do that about 1 to 2 years out before purchase. Cleaning up our credit score. That's going to be really important. We want to have a solid credit score so we can qualify for the best mortgage rates. Jade and Suzanne, have you found, for someone, what advice would you have for someone who's maybe 2 years out from home purchase to really get their shit together to make sure that they can qualify for the best rates? Any tips there?
I mean, I think what you've covered there, obviously getting your credit score as good as it can be. And, in this market, it's really important with all the competition to have at least 20% and have those funds on hand and have proof of those funds to go with any kind of offer. Suzanne?
Yeah, I think if you're 1 or 2 years out, I think it's important, and you're doing the down payment thing, you can get an app like Truebill that shows you where you're spending money, because probably you're spending money on stupid stuff. You don't need to pay $60 to meet a girlfriend for a beer, and that's what it ends up costing. And so kind of becoming aware of where you're being stupid about your purchasing, and I have this strange story. I wanted to own a house when I was 26, and I had no idea how I was going to own it, but I went to a garage sale and I bought these cake plates, which now I think are so ugly, but somebody had said, buy something. And, so I bought these cake plates that I was like, I'm going to put them in my house. And, 5 years later, I had them. And that's sort of a symbol of catch yourself on stupid spending and just keep putting that money away. And it is possible to clean up your credit. And that's what a lender will tell you. You could talk to him 2 years before, but I think 2 years out, it's really about habits and awareness and a decision and a focus, and giving yourself little targets that just keep chipping in and building and building and building that down payment.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I love that story. It's deciding that this is the thing that you want to do, whether it's you on your own or you and your partner. Is like, if you want to buy a house, and we have in this market to get the 20%, there's probably going to have to be sacrifices, right? Whether that's maybe moving into a cheaper place now where you're paying rent, that's a big expense, or, maybe taking that higher paying job that you don't love as much because your single focus becomes homeownership is this thing I absolutely have to do. Something we talk about a lot at Brooklyn FI is, a great reason to buy a home is that you're having a kid and you don't want your kid to have to move because your landlord is selling the building. There's a lot of great reasons to buy a home. There's also a lot of great reasons to rent. And we talk a lot about that in cities like New York City, where most of our clients are. The market has become so inaccessible to so many young families that renting often actually does make more sense when we have two incomes that aren't quite at the level where we can afford the $1.3 million home, which is the kind of the going rate for a regular 2-bedroom. We're just seeing prices get to be so big that, the goal of home ownership, it has to be, you have to feel it in your blood. It has to be the thing that you want more than anything. Cleaning up your credit score. A great way to do that is if you have any of those derogatory marks, those old medical bills that you forgot to pay, or those AT&T things that came through that are a big ding, pay those off, get it cleaned up. So if you haven't run your credit in a while, I like Credit Karma as a great way just to see where you're at. Great credit means you qualify for the best rates. It's really that simple, right? Would you say, like, great credit score, you're going to have access to those lowest mortgage rates. One thing that I like to do is just begin to understand where you want to buy. Start to learn the market. I probably don't have to tell all of you that, but spend some time on Zillow, on Redfin, on these sites where you're starting to learn, how much are these houses going for? Is a 3-bedroom in this neighborhood that you like, is that attainable? Is that something that's going to be possible? I like this one. This one, my husband and I actually made up together, which is make a list of non-negotiables. What are the things that the two of you together are not going to budge on? Because I think when you get into the frenzied, we got to make an offer now, this property is going to go in 6 hours, be true to yourselves. If you can't handle a more than 3rd floor walk up, don't spring for the 4th floor walk up. You're going to regret it. It's going to be a bad call. Something that is important that, a lot of first-time homeowners are surprised at, I've found, is that you actually need to get pre-approval from a bank often before you can even make an offer on a home. Could one of you explain kind of briefly what the pre-approval process looks like?
I don't know which one, Jade.
Yeah, sorry. Pre-approval, you basically want to, in California, is connecting with a lender, and W-2s, debt to income ratio, getting that all sorted out with your lender. You definitely want a pre-approval letter in hand before you can even think about making an offer.
And it basically means the lender looked at your finances and said, I can approve from what I've seen. They've kind of done a cursory glance. So it's not full approval, but it's very hard to get an accepted offer without a pre-approval letter unless it's cash.
Right. Yeah. So basically you're going to the bank and you're saying, look, I've got the income, I've got the cash here. Can you let this seller know that I look like a good buyer? Basically to prevent a situation where, anyone's just making willy-nilly offers on houses, seller gets excited about someone and turns out they didn't have the money in the first place. So that's a bit of protection for the seller there. Pre-approval is fairly easy to get. You connect with a lender, that could be a bank or it could be a mortgage broker who's going out to different banks to get you different rates. I've seen pre-approvals happen in as fast as 48 hours. So if you are thinking about a home purchase really in the next 6 months, I would say almost a year ahead of time, getting that pre-approval is key. It's also just great practice for going through the process of like, these are the documents you're going to need. If you're a Brooklyn FI client, you're pretty familiar with gathering documents. The mortgage process is quite thorough. They're going to ask for a lot. They're going to ask you for a letter of, can you please explain the transaction where you moved $100,000 from this account to that account? They're going to ask you for a letter and you're going to go, I don't know where to get that from. So just understanding, talking, having a lender that you trust and knows your situation is really helpful. So it's important to do that, well ahead of time. That said, I have had clients say, we fell in love with the house on Saturday and we had to get pre-approval and we bought the house on Wednesday. So it also can happen very quickly. I can say you can never be too prepared. You can never do too much, too well in advance. And yeah, find an agent or a realtor that you like and go start seeing houses. I think a lot of in this current market, in this frenzied, inflated time that we're in right now, there's a lot of people looking for the first time. If a lot of buyers had started the process a little bit earlier, they would have been less surprised by what's going on now. Right now, we have a lot of people getting into the market for the first time, having never even been to an open house before. So my recommendation is to get familiar with that process. That was hard during COVID. It started to open up a lot more now. So now we're seeing, an open house on the weekend. You are walking by, pop in, say hello, start to get a sense of what houses look like in the neighborhoods that you're exploring. And then, understand the market, real estate taxes, schools, finalize your budget and your cash plan. In New York, especially in the surrounding counties in Connecticut and New Jersey, you move over one little county line and the property taxes are completely different. So someone like a realtor or an agent, they can really help you understand what the additional costs are going to be. They can help point out, hey, that's a great elementary school, or, by the way, you're a block away from the hospital. You might want to think about that and how that's going to affect your sleeping because the ambulances are coming in and out all the time. Then finally, start shopping and make your purchase. That's the easy part, right? So I can stop talking for a second. Either of you have any, not to say horror stories, but just a recent experience of something interesting that's happened in the home buying market in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I did just had an income property that was a hell show, but The thing about every single transaction, and I say this, is they're all incredibly different. You don't see the same narrative twice because you don't have the same house. You don't have the same players. You have different agents, different buyers. They have different tolerance for stress. You have different lenders. Some are really, really good and can just like think out of the box and solve it. But it is basically to be prepared. Sometimes they go very smoothly and both sides are wonderful and both agents can work together very well. But a lot of times, they're always a bit of a clusterfuck of like just stressful little things that pop up because there are so many different elements. So you kind of have to be willing to just go through that. And that's what an agent does basically, I think, is they coordinate all the different hands, escrow, inspectors and lenders and title and permit issues. And they just keep everything moving on this 30-day clock that just keeps moving, whether you're ready or not, and that's what makes it stressful. So they're all a little bit, Byzantine and detailed and, but it's kind of funny because everybody on that transaction wants the same thing. So you just keep moving forward toward it. That would be, my advice. And they're all a little bit of a nightmare and they're all incredibly fantastic if you close,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine there's nothing better than that feeling of I put in 6 offers, I've been beaten out every time. And then finally, my 6th dream house, the first house I thought was my dream house, but now I'm six dream houses down the road. And finally, I was able to close and move in. So
yeah, it's huge. It's huge and satisfying and worth it. So, but they're not easy always.
No, definitely not. So a lot of questions we get from clients is how do I save cash for a down payment? Do I literally just keep it in cash? No, we mean in a bank account. I have gotten that question before. We mean keep it in a high yield savings account. That's really the best place for your cash. That's really where banks are going to want to see that. We have a rule of thumb that if you're going to make a purchase in the next 2 years, you should be holding that money in cash, because the threat is if we keep our money invested in the stock market and we're aiming to buy a $200,000 house and we're in an aggressive portfolio, well, what if the stock market doesn't behave in the way that we want? And our timeline for buying a house doesn't match up with the way that we want the stock market to behave. We could end up in a situation where we thought we'd saved $200,000, but the market takes a little bit of a dip and now we have $175,000. Therefore, we can't buy our house. We have to delay our purchase, which doesn't line up with our child being born, which is a big problem. So at Brooklyn FI, we've tried to solve this. I get a lot of questions from clients. Well, isn't there something that's a little bit safer, than an aggressive portfolio where we can get a little bit of upside because we're not 100% sure we want to buy a house? Maybe our goal is 4 years out or 6 years out. So we've come up with something at Brooklyn FI called our house hunting portfolio. And this is a portfolio that is invested in 25% in stocks in the stock market. It's very well diversified, and 75% of it is bonds and cash. So that way, if we do go through a recession or a stock market dip, yes, of course, the portfolio could lose value, but it's not going to be volatile. It's not going to lose 25% of its value overnight. So this is a great way to get some upside if you're not one of those families that's like, I'm ready at 100%, let's do this thing. You're maybe more of the, I'm due for a promotion in 2 years and we think we want to move to Portland. So, let's save up for a house, but we may not actually make that purchase. So this is kind of like a great in-between way to manage that cash. Folks, there's not a great way to save a bunch of cash and get a really high return. If this was the 90s, absolutely. You could walk into a bank, get 8% on your checking account, no problem. With that comes coupled much higher interest rates. We're in a very low interest rate environment. We're seeing 3.5%, 4% right now. With that comes our lower interest rates in the bank. So that's the trade-off here. So if you were getting 8% on your cash at the bank, we'd probably see mortgage rates 12, 14%. So that's the CSI. Yeah, exactly. My favorite, I should have put one in here, is to see savings account signs from banks in the late 80s where it's you can earn 11% on your cash. And you're like, oh my God. But we don't see the flip side of that, which is the really high.
What was it, 16% or something? Or
yeah, exactly. Oh. Yeah, super high. All right. So this is kind of the math part where we talk about how much house we can actually afford. So I'm going to bring over my little house hunting spreadsheet, which is very fun. So there's a bunch of numbers on here. And essentially what we're trying to do is quickly get to an estimate of how much this thing is going to cost. So I've got my two buyers here, Cher Horowitz and Josh Horowitz, Josh Horowitz, who are the stars of the film Clueless. So they're always my sample client across everything I do always. And they're interested in buying a home for $1.3 million. They talked to some lenders. The expected interest rate they're looking at is about 3.8%. And they're looking to close quickly, and they want to move in and have their first mortgage payment in June. So here are some of the things that we as financial planners load up onto your decision to purchase a home, because there are often hidden costs, and we want to make sure that we have enough cash to be able to actually afford this home, because it's not just the 20% down payment that we need. There are other things that we want to be aware of. I like to throw in some costs, planned renovations. No one ever in the history of the world has ever moved into a house and said, everything's perfect, I'm not changing a thing, unless they built it themselves. Disagree, anybody? Someone's always changing something: cabinet fixtures, floors, door handles, whatever. So we like to make sure that we have that cash ahead of time, so we don't move into a house and then have regret that we didn't have enough money to make the changes that we wanted. Moving and storage, we can debate on how much that costs. I'm just going to budget $2,000. And then upgrades. Definitely going to buy some new furniture, because our old furniture doesn't fit quite perfectly in the new house, or maybe there's 3 bedrooms and we had 2 bedrooms before. And then this client has some savings. So this is the cash that they have available for the down payment. They've got $200,000 in their high yield savings account at Marcus, and then they've got an inheritance that just came in of $250,000. Now, an inheritance or a gift from parents, this is something that's come up a few times with some of our clients, about this surprise of banks not liking that. Something that came up recently was a grandparent made a gift, and the mortgage lender didn't like that. Can you guys talk a little bit about if someone is planning on receiving a gift from a family member, what's the best way to handle that so the mortgage lenders are comfortable with counting that money towards the down payment?
Usually what we do in California, as opposed to say New York, we have escrow and an escrow officer. And typically, the way I like to do it, it's sometimes easiest, is just to have that gift letter, the gift and a gift letter that has the matching amount, just wired directly to escrow.
Okay. So the money never actually gets into your hands. The money actually goes from the gift giver right into the escrow account. Is that right?
Sometimes those funds, they need to be seasoned, depending on the lender and your situation, and that could kind of hold you up for a period of time. So typically a gift is better in California to just have it wired directly into escrow, and then it's sort of clean and easy. You don't have to worry about any kind of time lapses. It sort of depends on the lender as well, but that's typically how I like to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's this idea of this gift letter, which basically is a signed letter from the donor that says, this is a gift. It's not a loan. I don't expect it back. So that way the banks know that you have the actual money to be able to afford this house, because banks are taking a risk on you, right? By loaning you this large amount of money to purchase this home. So they want to make sure that you are financially sound. So that's an important part. Something that has surprised us a few times throughout the purchase process. Down payment. Yeah. Typical down payment is 20%. A lot of clients ask if they can put less down. In competitive markets like New York and LA, Austin, Denver, it's at least 20%, right? Are you seeing that as the trend? Are we needing to put more than 20% down to be competitive? What are some more recent examples of having to put even more than 20% down?
In this market, where it's a seller's market and you have 10, 20, sometimes 60 offers on a house, the seller and the listing agent are looking at the best offer. So if you're coming in with 5 or 10% down, you're kind of flicked away, unless it's a property that doesn't have any offers, or maybe a condo that's on the outskirts. But the other thing that we're running into, and this is almost countered in every escrow in negotiation, is is to have the appraisal removed, because you have a lot of buyers willing to kind of go that extra mile. And so if you can put 25, 30% down, you sort of already have that extra cash to make up for an appraisal discrepancy. So the more the better in this market.
Yeah, for sure. So, look, 20% is kind of our savings goal. So, with our $1.3 million house, we're going to need $260,000 for the down payment. We're going to be borrowing just over $1 million from the bank. And then we can look at our monthly payment to kind of see, is this something that we can afford? For those of you who are Brooklyn FI clients, you know that we have a bunch of different calculations to get to that number of how much can we actually afford. There's a couple different versions of that. It's how much does the bank think you can afford? There's something called the debt to income ratio. Your monthly debt that you're going to take on for this mortgage, is it going to be too much? Is it going to be too much stress on the family? Are you going to default on this loan? So banks have this, rule of thumb across the industry that your total housing payment should not be, or all of your debts should not be more than 36% of your income each month. So that's the first thing that we look for. But there are a bunch of other different calculations that we can go into of how much you can actually afford as an individual buyer. Are there two incomes? Are they steady incomes? Are one of you self-employed? So maybe there's going to be some variable income. A lot goes into this decision. Something to watch out for my New Yorkers out there, the 1% mansion tax. This is a nasty little bugger. 1% of any home sold in the New York City area. I'm sorry, if a home in the New York City area the sale price is over $1 million, 1% of that goes to the city, because that is considered a mansion. If I were going to run for mayor, I would get that raised, because if any of you have been on Zillow recently, you will know that $1 million will not get you a mansion. It might get you a studio in Chelsea, if you're lucky. And yeah, something, we always throw around mortgages, like we all know what we're talking about, but typically mortgages are 30 years. That is the term of mortgages. There are potentially opportunities to have a shorter mortgage. It only makes sense, in my opinion, in extreme cases, to actually put more of your money towards that home. So in this case, our family, Cher and Josh, they've got significant savings for this down payment, right? They're in a good spot, but they have some upfront costs that are going to be unavoidable. And then of course there are variable costs. There's our $20,000 for renovations. A lot of my clients protest and say, we're not going to spend that much on renovations. Oh. And then we and then we see the receipts, and they are often much larger than that. So total upfront additional costs, $136 on top of our down payment of $260 means that we need $396,000, almost $500 million to buy this $1.3 million house. Luckily, we've got some money coming in from that inheritance, so that's going to make that no problem. We actually have a surplus if we were going to put down 20%. Now, what happens if this is a more typical situation where we don't have that inheritance, and this family has worked diligently throughout their late 20s and early 30s to save $200,000? Well, look, they're still really far away from that down payment. So I think we are in this unfortunate cycle right now where homes in these major cities are often unattainable for high income earners even. This is a big number. That's a large shortfall. That's not something that we can, save up for in a year or two because we're really diligent savers. This is almost unattainable. I don't mean to be a downer, but I think it's important to think realistically about, how much house can you actually afford? There was a question from someone who pre-registered. It was like, should I buy my upstate home first? Because I absolutely can't afford in the city. Should I buy a cool cabin upstate for, $500,000 because I can afford that as my second home? Yeah. Sometimes if that's, your deepest desire of your heart is to be a homeowner, that might be a great option for you because you're just priced out of these very, very expensive markets like New York City, LA, basically, and any major city at this point is what we're seeing right now. So that's our little math there. Let's hop back into our slideshow. So there are a bunch of people involved in this process, right? It's not just you and your agent. Can you, both of you, tell me a little bit about the purpose of these people throughout this transaction? What does a lawyer what is the purpose a lawyer serves in a real estate transaction?
I know in New York, my brother is a realtor in Brooklyn, and lawyers kind of take over the process, from the agents. In California, we have a different system. We have an escrow system, so everything is kind of run through escrow, and we very rarely want to have lawyers come into the situation. But as needed, we're sort of here to refer vetted referrals for that if needed. But California and New York are very different in that way.
Suzanne, what about a lender? What is a lender's role in all this?
I mean, a lender is there to approach your finances, and they have to get pretty creative sometimes because underneath the lender is this underwriter thing. And the underwriters, I almost see them as this like Machiavellian troublemaker, they just cause problems. And you're like, and you had mentioned like, why did you file your taxes in 2013 with one, so it gets really complicated, but the lender is there to just make sure the underwriter gets everything and to think creatively. There's a lot of different ways to put a loan together. And you just need an aggressive, you have to have a lender unless you're all cash, but they're so good at what they do. They're almost it would almost be a separate webinar in a way, because they really can break their stuff down. I always said that it's escrow and inspect. There's all these different parts, and you have to kind of let everybody do their part and not. I don't give legal advice, and I don't really give financial advice, because these things are so important to come in clean, come in strong, and make sure you're showing your best foot forward.
This might be a stupid question, but what's the difference between an agent and a realtor?
I actually don't know. I mean, I think they're kind of, tomato,
same, right?
tomato. It's still, still a tomato. Maybe one has a brokerage. But I think a realtor and agent are the same thing. Don't you, Jade?
I mean, it's best to kind of break it down into agent, salesperson, and broker. In California, every agent is under a broker. So you have sort of your leader broker, and then you have all the sub agents underneath, and the broker takes on liability and risk.
So you run your license through the brokerage. They hang the shingle, and you run your license and your business through that, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I saw a commercial on TV at like a doctor's office recently that was like the Realtor Association of America, like make sure your person is an actual realtor because everyone else is untrustworthy. And I was like, is that a thing? Doesn't sound like
basically you need to have an affiliation with, we have California Association of Realtors, with the Malibu Association. I think Suzanne is as well. And, you need to have your license active and,
you can't submit a contract if your license isn't up to snuff and active.
Okay, got it. So we've decided that
I don't know, sometimes people have like a very sort of strange approach to realtors, and I just think they're actually good, honest people.
Yeah.
I'm that person, the rules and ethics are so intense. I don't know,
sounds like financial planning, where it's like anyone can call themselves a financial planner. So there's all these designations that, are meant to police people because of all the bad apples in the financial services industry. But people are more trustworthy, I guess. What about what is an inspection? What's an inspector do? I'm like imagining like Inspector Gadget, like go Gadget. Like what is an inspector actually? When do they come into the process, and what do they do?
The inspectors will come in as soon as you open escrow. So as soon as you have a signed and executed contract, you sort of hold the ball. And then now is our time to sort of, look under the hood, look at everything we can see into the house. Well, a general inspector is sort of the first person in, and they're going to look at everything from the roof to the foundation to the walls to electrical, anything that they can get into without obviously opening up walls. You want to have a sewer inspector to kind of look at that sort of plumbing. termite inspector to make sure, it's not riddled with termites. And if it is, to try to get some sort of credit or price reduction. And then after that, you go on an as needed basis. If the house has a fireplace, you want to get a chimney inspector. If it's on a hillside, you want to get a geological inspector. And those are sort of dictated on each different property and each escrow. But you really want to do inspections. I think, I see a lot in this market where, sellers are sort of, they want buyers to waive everything. But I think having inspections actually protects the seller too, because then you're allowing the buyer to come in and take a look. There's nothing that you can hide, because they've had their opportunity as the buyers to come in and really look at everything. So that's kind of the first thing that happens when you get into escrow. Bring in the inspectors. Let's see what's really going on with this property.
And typically you could rely on your agent to recommend an inspector. To, like, I imagine both of you have, lots of folks that you trust, that you've worked with for years. And that's kind of like the value of an agent, is like, I don't know any inspectors. What am I going to go on Yelp and find like best inspectors in Brooklyn? Like, bad idea, right? Yeah. We need someone who's trustworthy. Cool.
Yeah. Agents are like tour guides for this process. It's a whole world, and they know where to eat, where to shop, they know who to inspect, who to use. They know, it's a different world for 30 days.
What's the best advice that you would have for a first-time home buyer who's never been through this process before?
I think, other than the obvious, which is, to save for the down payment and to get pre-approved, is really just understanding the market that you're in. And being prepared. If you really want a house, and especially if you're on a short timeline, you really have to understand the realities of the market. What I tell all my buyers in LA is, the list price is not the sale price. So, the sooner you can kind of get your head around what the market is, I think the sooner you're going to find a house and be able to get an escrow and close. So that, for me, that's a big one. It's just really understanding the market. And obviously an agent can kind of tell you what the market is in each different neighborhood. It's like, there's neighborhoods in LA that are maybe going to be more competitive than others, and an agent can kind of guide you through that. But I think knowing the market is really important.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart thing, is the sticker price is not that.
Yeah.
It's not, and you need to know that margin, and you might need to come up with that cash, which is hard, but the other thing I would say, even if it's not your dream house, just get into a house, because you're going to make equity. Even if it's a condo, like, it doesn't have to be your dream house. It just has to be a good house that you can live in for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So closing costs. This is going to sound familiar. Jade, I asked you what were the estimated closing costs that we could expect for something. And this was in California. And basically we budgeted about 1.5%. So 1 to 2% of the price of the home is what we can expect to pay in closing costs. And don't forget about all these other little things that are going to come up before you can actually go through with the purchase. General inspector, a few $100 for a sewer scope. Something that has come up is, depending on where you are in the world, let's say you're buying in New York City and Red Hook, flood insurance is going to be a huge expense for you. Or if you're buying in East LA, in some of the hills, fire insurance is going to be a huge expense. So understanding those expenses as part of your monthly budget is going to be really important when deciding if this is the house for you. So this is California. We're in New York. This is apologize. It's so little, but there are so many little things in New York City because there are so many different people that we got to pay. We got to pay the bank attorney. There's title insurance if you're buying a condo. There's mortgage tax. There's recording fees. New York City just loves to, add a bunch of bureaucracy onto things. And don't forget about that mansion tax, that 1% of the entire purchase price for all sales over $1 million. I would bet that we see that $1 million, that threshold go up in the future, just considering where prices are right now.
Or just change the name, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't make it hurt.
The condo tax. Yeah, it's an ironic tax at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of little costs. We can help you estimate exactly what it's going to be. an agent can help you know exactly what the closing costs are going to be for that particular property, depending on where it is, depending on what the local taxes are. All right. So this is what to expect your first year as a home buyer. I think there are a lot of emotions around this process. You're going to feel elation. We did it. We own a beautiful home. Congratulations, everybody. Regret. This is so much more work than we anticipated and so much more expensive. That, small bathroom renovation that we were going to do, we budgeted $15,000. It's 6 months later, it's $35,000 and it's not done. And the contractor took on another job. Things happen. You're gonna have those feelings. I can almost guarantee. Don't like to make guarantees in the financial services industry, but that is something that I can guarantee. Terror. Oh shit, the roof is leaking. What are we gonna do? Do we have enough cash to cover this? Also, we have to go to a hotel because all of our stuff is ruined. Not to say that that couldn't happen in an apartment, but when you own the home, it's your problem. And then of course, joy. This is a house that is ours. We own it. We can do whatever we want. We can paint it red. Let's have all of our friends over and have a glass of wine on our beautiful new deck. There might be some resentment, honey, I told you we should have waited to redo that second bathroom. It wasn't time to do that. And maybe we didn't have enough money to do that. And this is my hot tip, which is that when you move into your house, don't buy anything big for 90 days. Because you don't know how the light is going to move across your living room. You might notice that there's a spot that gets really hot. And if you want to put your records there, they might melt and warp, which has happened to me in 2 different apartments. So just move in, feel comfy, buy a bed so you can sleep on it. You probably already have one of those. Get your old couch in there. It's not the right couch. We all know that, but wait before we make any big major purchases or changes to the house. That's the best little advice I could give you there. Looks like we've got a few minutes for questions. So these are the ones that were submitted ahead of time. I think we covered some of these, but maybe I'll pick out a few. Maybe this first one. Yeah. What are some secrets? What are the biggest pitfalls that first-time home buyers might be not aware of in this process? Any ideas?
Are you at Jade? Is he there?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this stuff is what we've already covered. I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is just to know the market, and know what you're up against. If you're in Northeast Pennsylvania, you might be competing against nobody for the house. But here in LA, it's everybody's scrapping, everybody's trying to take advantage of these low rates while we still have them. So I think it's just being, put on your armor, and be ready to fight.
Put on your war boots, because it's not for the faint of heart, but anything worth doing isn't, so it's going to be, you can't get battle fatigue. You can't get upset. You can't get emotional. You're going to have to pay a little bit more. It's the Olympics,
Yeah. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how much of a commitment it is to go through this process. I think a lot of times folks will start this maybe when they're pregnant or when they just got a new job, when they've got a lot going on, and they just get kind of overwhelmed by the fact that you got to go see a bunch of houses, you got to get a bunch of documents to your lender. Going through the underwriting process is you're going to need a lot of time to go through statements. You're going to need to ask your accountant to hurry up and do your tax return, which will stress us out and we will make a mistake. So just all of those things that go into this, just know that it's not just, a lot of people think like, oh, in the movies, you find a house you like, you walk in, you take some photos and you put in an offer. Like, this takes a long time. And it's an emotional.
Well, you're getting estimates and inspections and bids, and you're negotiating and you're going back and forth and you're doing counters and you're talking to that client like every night for 30 days.
You
but don't be deterred.
Yes.
Don't be deterred.
Let's see. Oh yeah. So we kind of answered this question. If your first home is a weekend home, yet you still rent in the primary residence, is this a smart move?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great move. If you're in a really expensive market and maybe your income is not quite there to afford, the 2-bedroom house that you want. Yeah, I think that can be a great move. How to determine your budget for a long-term home when there's uncertainty about future finances, career changes. Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. Is, the bank might be willing to loan you money right now on your $350,000 salary, But if there's uncertainty about that, you definitely do not want to get yourself in a situation where you have this expensive mortgage that you can't cover. So, from a financial perspective, if that is, in your future where you might be taking some time off, or there might be some changes at your company where there's a layoff. In that case, I would suggest having that backup cash, a backup bigger emergency fund to make sure you have 6 or even 12 months of mortgage payments just in case something happens. I think that's also really important when we have one income. When we have a 2-income household, there's less pressure, right? If someone changes their job, we still have some income coming in. When it's if you lose your job or something changes, you could find yourself in a situation where you can't make that payment. So in that case, 12 months of extra mortgage payments in cash ready to go might take you a little bit longer to save up for it. Does living in a city with an expensive housing market change your mind on whether or not to purchase a home? With our clients at BKFI, unfortunately, absolutely. We have a lot of really tough conversations about home affordability. We really want to buy a home. We really want to buy a home in Brooklyn. And we're looking at homes for folks with 2 or 3 kids, and a 3-bedroom house in Brooklyn in a neighborhood near a nice public school where you're not going to have to, go into Manhattan for private school. $1.7 million. That's out of reach for a lot of folks. So in a city like New York, sometimes that does change our mind. And we do say, let's rent for a few more years until we're at a point where we can save up for that down payment. This is a good one. How do you know when the best time to buy is based on external factors like price history, inventory? Any insight there, folks?
Yeah, when the best time to buy is when it's over.
Hindsight, yeah.
Other than that, roll up your sleeves and just put your teeth in, and don't worry. If you live in a big city, just do it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's everyone kicks themselves. Oh, we should have bought, in the depths of the pandemic. Well, remember where your head was at in the depths of the pandemic, when there was a global pandemic and you weren't sure if you're going to lose your job and the world was melting down and the stock market was crashing. I remember folks going in who were ready to buy houses in June of 2020 and us going, okay, let's go. And they're like, I'm not buying a house. I don't know what's going to happen. I might move, back to my parents' house in Ohio. So hindsight is 2020. That's a great point. I completely agree with that. We do have a question from the chat, which is, I'm currently on Zillow getting a good idea of the list prices for a certain area, but how do I know if houses are going above the ask in neighborhoods I'm researching? Or is this something I would wait to learn when working with an agent who knows the area? I would say from experience, unless you've created an algorithm that can actually track the delta between list price and final purchase price, your agent is going to be so helpful here, because you're going to find a house that you love that's listed at $1 million. Your agent's going to say, hey, here's 3 comparative homes in the area. Actually, I think this house is probably going to go for, $1.2 million or something like that. I imagine you both would agree with that an agent's really going to be your best bet there. And that's where the value is really going to come in, is to kind of sanity check you, right?
Yeah.
I think it's on the comps. We can, as agents, we can, draw a very particular area around whatever property you're looking at, and really look at where this neighborhood is going based on the zip code, based on where it's located in a certain geographic area. If it's a mid-century, all bets are off, and it might be $1 million over asking. So, but
It's true.
We can, it's almost like not even, it's a different category than a house. But yeah, we can kind of like pinpoint with comps, like where we think this is going to go. And it kind of changes a little bit based on where the market is and where the rates are and where people, where we think it's going to go in the next few months, quarter to quarter, but it's all in the comps.
Yep, for sure. How do you calculate potential closing costs and account for them in your budget? It really just depends exactly where you're buying. The numbers on Zillow can kind of help with that. Obviously, we talked about the mansion tax in New York City. This is really, I think it's so important to overestimate this when you're saving for your down payment. So we tell all of our clients, save 6%, which is way more than you're going to pay. But just to have that cash ready to go, I'd much rather you be conservative in this scenario, because there's nothing worse than getting into your dream home. That first mortgage payment comes and you've just spent all your cash and you actually can't afford it. That's going to be a negative experience. We want to avoid that. I'm going to skip this last question. I think it was a specific one and it got cut off. So last chance for questions in the chat before we let everyone get on with the rest of their evening. Any last final questions? Nope. Okay. Well, this has been, I've learned a lot. Thank you so much to our panelists. It's a crazy housing market right now. So for those of you who are looking, find someone who you trust. You trust us, your financial planners, to help you determine how much house you can afford. Hopefully we can connect you with someone who you can trust to help you actually buy that house. So thank you so much, Suzanne and Jade.
Yeah, I just want to say, don't
Yes.
be dissuaded. It's hard, but it's really smart, and just keep forward and keep going, keep your focus, and you can get there and get there. It's okay. It's great. It's a really smart thing to do. So.
Yep. And I'm just typing in the URL, brooklynfi.com/events. Oops, that's not to everybody.
It almost hurts to watch people rent, when you're
brooklynfi.com/events. That is where the recording of this will be posted in a few days. Thank you so much, folks. Thanks to all of our attendees. Lovely to see some familiar faces. Have a great day. Bye.
Jay, thanks everybody.